A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome once again to Films I'm Willing to Talk About Again. As I've mentioned before, I did in fact have intentions on going to see the film Absolution, and this is basically where I'm going to leave my review of it. However, there's a pretty interesting part here. You might be familiar with a crew member of mine known as Nolan. Well, he has in fact been involved on the channel for some time now, and the thing is that even though I've planned on seeing it, he himself actually went to the theater just yesterday and saw Absolution himself. He thought it would be a good idea in order for me to get my reviews out and about for the channel that, of course, if he went ahead and saw the movie, it would probably save me the trouble of doing so. But you know what? Maybe it's probably best for me not to take his word for it. Yet, I was bent on creating a review of this film anyways, and so, you know what, at least from his perspective, it would be a good idea. Since, however, he doesn't want to show himself on the channel, I'm just going to, in fact, recite from some notes that I left around as he described the film to me in detail. And, of course, with the notes I've jotted down, I can tell you right now, Absolution is not exactly a great film in terms of writing and directing, but when you think about it, Norwegian film director Hans Peter Moland, who was also behind the works of such films like The Beautiful Country, Zero Kelvin, and probably one of his best works was In Order of Disappearance, starring Stellan Skarsgård. But the thing is that what interested me about Absolution wasn't entirely about Hans Moland, but it was instead mainly the cast, which consisted of well-known actors like Liam Neeson, Yolanda Ross, Ron Perlman, Jimmy Gonzalez, and Josh Drennan. And that, in a way, was good enough for me to earn my attention. But in terms of anything else, what this basically is a movie about a certain gangster. A gangster that, unfortunately, doesn't do so well. Mainly because he's had a long running career that hasn't necessarily gone off too well. Mostly because of how long he's been doing it. As you know, when you age long enough, your life doesn't necessarily feel the same as it used to be. You might not have that much energy in you, and you probably won't even be able to do such basic things that easily. In any case though, this gangster still does try to put things together here. And it's mostly done as a purpose. So that way he eventually tries to make amends with his family, and he also tries to fix up whatever mistakes he's had in the past. As we know, Liam Neeson movies, they are well known for being pretty high in terms of action, suspense, as well as some instances of drama and satire. And I have talked a bit about many different Liam Neeson films over the years, like there was the 2021 Netflix film, The Ice Road, which also starred the likes of Lawrence Fishburne, and there was also the 2011 film with Liam Neeson, which I've talked about as well. So when you think about it, Liam Neeson has had quite a few appearances on this channel over the years. And with a good amount of movies since the year 2008 coming out and starring this unique action star, it's basically way, way better than anything we could have gotten out of something like Steven Seagal, maybe? But I don't know. Not many people want to talk about him anymore. And probably there's a reason for it. Anyways though, you basically had yourself, Liam Neeson, as the unnamed thug whom, for whatever reason, is out for revenge. And as the storyline itself goes on, some people might argue for the fact that Liam Neeson has had some repetition for being in a more repetitive and somewhat monotonous role. As in, because of all these films that were more action-oriented with gunfights and some combat, there's been tons of movies like that. And it's a bit rare to find Liam Neeson films that are outside of that normal range, but think about it. Jason Bourne, Mission Impossible, or even those old school action stars like Magnum P.I. or anybody from MASH. I mean, There's nothing really wrong with those sort of things because they all tend to focus on those sort of genres. But that's mostly because that's what they're known for. We know that even Knight Rider and RoboCop were well known on the basis of upholding the law and utilizing whatever tools they got. And of course, we really want to get into the creative field like MacGyver. But apart from all the old school stuff we've had, a lot of the new school stuff that people try to do in order to replicate the old school stuff, sometimes it just doesn't go so well. You kind of need a good amount of history and knowledge behind the many things that went down back in the day in order to get a better understanding of what went down in those days. So this way, you create something new, and you could definitely do something that might be just as good as the original, if not better. But you know what? Some other things I could mention here based on the film itself is that while the action is alright for what it is, and of course, with the appearances of both Ron Perlman and Liam Neeson, we don't necessarily get to see the two together. It's certainly nothing like with Morgan Freeman and basically many different people who were more rising stars rather than superstars like him. I mean, you got one big actor amongst other actors, but in this movie you have two actors that have been very well known for decades now. And being that we have one movie that brings them together, it almost seems like a match that was truthfully made just for us. Fans of Ron Perlman and Liam Neeson, fans of the gangster lifestyle that was mostly upheld within the age of Prohibition, as well as the many, many instances of the Italian Mafia, and of course, the unique directing role of Hans Molen. But as Nolan put together for me, he describes it as quote-unquote, not a very good piece, worthwhile, of both Liam Neeson and Ron Perlman fans. And I suppose this is certainly a one good instance in where I don't really need to see the movie in order to actually hear from someone who has been a fan of those actors. And more so, despite my own fanship towards those two, it was wise for me to basically allow someone else to conduct the review and put it all together for me to work with. So that way, it probably could have saved me a good $10. Yeah, it's kind of a stretch, but it seems worth it. And even though he gives it a scoring of his own, knowing from the notes that I've read so far and knowing how the movie's plot went down from start to finish, and knowing all of the impacts that it makes, including its box office and critics' reception, I'm going to basically give it probably not a great score for what it is, but it's a 6.7 out of 10.1. So, by all means, it's not exactly a great film entirely, but if you really happen to have a good fanship for the likes of Neeson and Perlman, or if you just happen to take up the many different aspects that correlate to them, then please, give it a watch if you might. But maybe wait until it's out on digital. And so, I hope you enjoyed this piece here. I'm especially grateful to have Nolan here provide me with all this sort of information, so that way I can just have a good video out about this. And I'll see you guys later on in the week with some more stuff later on.
Whatever I want, I usually get, and I'm thinking I want you, but I don't have you yet. I ain't got no tricks to be playing on you.